I think that the whole region is religious in a way, and Islam cannot be ignored in this whole region, and even secularists. It's strange. Even the ones who are almost anti-religious, they tend to be religious in
a Muslim way,
in being anti-religious. So I think it's impossible to avoid. What's extremely important is that theological work, serious theological work, must go forward into trying to come up with ways of talking about democracy and exercising democracy that are in line with the spiritual heritage of these countries, and at the same time open to the beginning of civil society, a true pluralism and diversity that is essential to democracy. What I see in Libya is an attempt by certain Islamist streaks or lines to monopolize Islam and monopolize God. It's like saying, if you're with me, then you're a Muslim and you're with God, and if you're not with me, then you're not a proper Muslim and you're not with God. And I believe one of the most urgent tasks of proper scholars in Libya is to get together and say, look, you cannot use God in that way in politics. And this is not to say that God is not important for politics. It's simply you cannot possess God and use him as an instrument or a hammer against your opponents in elections, which is already happening in Libya. There are pamphlets being distributed in Tripoli University that say that voting for a Almani or secular person is haram, is forbidden, and that's ludicrous. And the scholars have to say something about this. Unfortunately, the diversity of religious opinions is not reflected in the new ifta function, nor in the Ministry of the Awqaf. This is something that I personally have talked to the Mufti about, and the Minister of the Awqaf, and also to the government, saying that you must populate the Council of Ifta to make sure that all the diversity of religious opinion is represented, and that the Awqaf minister should not use his ministry to impose his brand of Islam on the preachers. Or one of the key things that regimes like Gaddafi's did was to centralize all the religious endowments and the control of the mosques. And we kind of, like post-liberation, just assume that continues. I believe that one of the most important acts would be to return what were called the private endowments, so that the madrasas and the mosques would have their own kind of endowment and have a pluralism of endowments without centralized control, so that you don't end up with a regime ever again controlling religiosity. I'm afraid that there is a cheap way to impose your school by, in a way, maintaining the old system of centralized command and control over religion. And this is what I urge the Mufti and the Minister to not do, not to enjoy the centralization that was really an inheritance from Gaddafi, to impose their own school on everybody else. And I kept telling the other scholars that, look, we don't have to be content with the centralized Awqaf system, that if these guys don't listen and do not include us all, then maybe we'll do away with the whole system. And this is an argument that has to go on not only in Libya, but I think this question will be raised in Egypt regarding the Awqaf and even the Azhar and how it's run, the Dar al-Ifta al-Masriya and how it's run, and also in Tunisia, how Zaytuna is. I mean, Zaytuna should not be controlled by a political Islamist party. Zaytuna is much grander than any party, And I think that the traditional scholars who are historically very quiet and prayerful and so on have to be vocal, or risk losing their voice forever, because if they don't stand up for what's right, and if they cannot give a message to young people that's conducive to a better life, then they might as well just, how can I say? Maybe I shouldn't.
No, you've got the picture.
Yeah.
What about the question of the way and the degree to which Islam should be constitutionally recognised? Because that's also quite a sensitive issue.
If you ask Libyans, they will all tell you that it should be there in the constitution. I don't think that there is a difference on that. I think the difference is on what that means exactly. So when you say Sharia, what do you mean by Sharia? And there are modern versions of what Sharia means that are, how can I put it, flattened engineering like systems of basically sets of rules. So this is Sharia, it's a set of rules, and when you want to apply Sharia, you simply apply these rules, okay? And the application is a matter of taking the rule and applying it to the situation. This kind of mechanized Sharia is actually not traditional. It's actually a kind of a modern version of what Sharia was like. Sharia in its original sense of being broad way, a path to God, a spiritual journey as well as a set of rituals and kind of guidelines in life. That broader notion of Sharia is very different. So when you say, should Sharia be the basis for the constitution, if you mean by Sharia the first set, I will definitely say absolutely not. If you say, is it the second, I would say yes, because I believe that the Libyan people are Muslims and they have every right to live and to live by a Muslim constitution or Islamic constitution, but broadly conceived, so that you're talking about the intentionalities of the law and the spirit of the law, not merely the letter of the law. So the issue, I think, again, will come back to the clash between versions of Islam that are literal and flattened and rule-based, versus versions of Islam that are much richer and spiritual and more open-ended and more accommodating. You know, in the Maliki tradition, which is the historical tradition of Libya, urf, or custom, was one of the sources of the Sharia. So the habits of people, the norms in a society were taken into consideration. The maslaha, or what is called what is good for society, or to put it in philosophical terms, utility, but not utility as in the narrow sense of utility. Helpfulness would be a better word, has to be considered as a source of legislation, for example. So the older, richer tradition, I think, can be invoked and has can be actually conducive to a very good and democratic constitution. But I'm worried that I don't want to say McDonald's, or because that in a way maybe I could get sued by McDonald's. But there's
pretty safe.
But there is a kind of a mech Sharia in a way, a fast food version of Sharia, of take the rule, apply it, mechanical thing. That's preached by some Islamist movements, that is actually quite alien to the tradition. It's amazing how non-traditional it is, and yet it tries to monopolize religiosity and calls the religious scholars who are the heirs of the tradition innovators, and innovators in the bad sense of innovators, like heretical in a sense. So it
matters a lot, though, doesn't it? I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, but something that struck me when I was in Egypt just before Christmas is that the question of the way that underpinning of Sharia works is critical to whether minorities feel comfortable in the society, and only if minorities feel comfortable do you have a true democracy, don't you? So that's got to be got right in the long term, isn't it?
Absolutely, and look at the traditional approach to Sharia, like the old Azhari approach, before the Azhar got Nasserized and secularized in the bad sense of secularized by Nasser, and also in many ways mutilated. The old Azhar tradition was quite accommodating of minorities, just as the Ottoman millet system, for example, was. I mean, by the standards of those days, were quite advanced in their approach towards minorities. These flattened versions of Sharia are very unaccommodating of minorities, just as they are unaccommodating of different Muslim schools. I mean, you think that it's dangerous for minorities. It's even dangerous for Sufis with their tombs and their. I mean, if Sufi tombs are being blown up, what's going to happen to churches? I mean, it's so the intolerance is built into these positivistic, flattened, mechanistic versions of Islam that are unfortunately propagated by certain parties, which are, I find, the most corrosive of the whole religion.